Welcome to the Dogs Podcast with your hosts, Blake Reneker, Justin Charles, and Josh All.
Hey, what's up, Browns fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Dogs Podcast. Josh All, your host, and this is going to be part one of my conversation over the weekend with the UK Browns fan. So I recorded a podcast with him. By the way, his name is Oliver George. He told me before the show that our American way of pronouncing that name is Oliver, but over there, the British way of saying it is Oliver. So either way, Oliver George is joining me, or more so, I join him on the podcast. So you guys are going to be able to see that conversation in its entirety throughout the week. But today is part one. It's going to be split into 3 different episodes for you guys. Because like I said, the conversation went long. We had a lot of great topics to discuss about the Cleveland Browns. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So we're going to listen to part one today of that conversation. At the end of that, when I cut back here to the studio, we are going to do a voicemail and a couple things to wrap it up before we get out of here. So thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to jump over to the conversation. Before I do, make sure you guys go to jointhedogs.com if you want to be part of the Dog Pack Discord. Hang out with everybody in the community, be part of the Dog Pack Discord live episodes. And honestly, it's just a great way to support the show. It helps us out financially. Everything you guys do to support the show, engaging with the content, following us on social media, everything helps the podcast continue to grow and continues to allow us to do more and more content and more cool things for you guys moving forward. So thank you to everybody who's already joined the Dog Pack. And again, that's jointhedogs.com. So let's kick it over to part one of my conversation with Mr. Oliver George.
Hello, everybody. Joined today by Josh from the Dogs Podcast. Thank you so much for not just joining me, Josh, but working around all of the issues that I have had over the last few days. No broadband, doing this on my phone network, which hopefully holds up. It seems to be holding up pretty well so far. So hopefully we have no problems. But thank you so much for giving me some of your time to talk some Browns, Josh. First and foremost, as I always do, before we get into Browns, how are you doing on this fine Sunday morning over there in Cleveland?
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. First of all, we are no strangers to technical difficulties here on the Dogs Podcast, as anyone who's watched our show knows over the years. So totally understand. That makes sense. In Ohio, today is a very weird day. I'm glad you asked, because where I'm at, and for the majority of the state, it's going to be like 85, 90 degrees.
Yeah, I saw
Cleveland,
this. Yeah.
Cleveland is like in the 30s off the lake.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. But
is that normal for that to happen?
Anything's normal here in Ohio. I'm not kidding. I think last week we had a day where it was almost 80 degrees. The next day it was a snowstorm. Yeah.
You see, us British, we love to complain about the weather, but to be honest, talking to people like yourself, talking to people over in the States, it does make you realize that it's not actually that bad, the weather over here. It's consistently not great, but we don't quite have the variation that you guys have where it could be really hot or really cold. We're kind of just in the middle, and that's a lot easier to prepare for and to deal with, I think. But who knows? Maybe people in Canada or the Scandinavian countries have got something else to say about that. But obviously going to talk some Cleveland Browns, go over a few topics with Josh. And first and foremost, I suppose to start with, we've had a lot of change in the last few months with this team. The most change since I've been following the Browns. I mean, when I got into the Browns, it was pretty much every year that we were firing a coach and the GM and a different group of guys every single year. So, the Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry era has kind of been the longest kind of continuous group at the Browns since I've been a fan. Obviously, you've been a fan longer than me. I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but how do you kind of not view it, but what's your thoughts on all of the change? Obviously, I'm sure you're the same as me. You welcome the change, but do you think it's going to take a bit of getting used to with how much we got used to the same names that were in the building over the 5 years? Now that's completely different.
The change was much needed, in my opinion. I know we were a little bit split on our podcast. Blake was not in favor of firing Kevin Stefanski and a lot of the coaches. Me, Justin, the other guys, Kenny Mack, very much ready for the change. I mean, it was 2 straight seasons of terrible football, especially on the offensive side of the ball, which is where a lot of my issues with the coaching staff came into play, because we've got this head coach who's supposed to be an offensive guru, offensive-minded guy. And, he's turning over play calling duties now a couple of years in a row. We just found out yesterday on Jarvis Landry's podcast that he was actually turning over play calling duties to Alex Van Pelt when Jarvis was here. We didn't know that. That wasn't reported. So that's interesting information and tidbits that are coming out on Landry's podcast. That's Fourth and South, I believe it's called. So if anybody wants to hear what Jarvis Landry has to say with his co-host Leonard Fournette, go check it out. It's good stuff. The changes, I was a little apprehensive with the Todd Monken hire at first, just because, 60-plus-year-old head coach, first-timer, that has never worked out in the NFL.
Yep.
But the more and again, I kind of did the same thing with Ken Dorsey, so I cautioned myself of talking myself into how it can work when my initial reaction was, I don't really like it. But I do know that there is a lot of respect around the league for Todd Monken. A lot of coaches are very complimentary of him, his offensive abilities. Will it work as a head coach? That is yet to be seen. But with this head coaching cycle, I think it might have been the best choice for how the roster is looking right now. And that, he's brought a lot of great coaches over from Baltimore. So I think that's encouraging. And I think it will take a little time to get used to the names, who's in charge of what, who's handling what duties. But either way, we needed to change something, and I'm glad that they went that route.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the only annoying thing for me, is that I had all of these names kind of etched into my brain that I've now got to relearn a whole new group of guys. Thankfully, some of them have obviously been here before with George Warhop, etc., and some of those other guys. But I was the same as you. I mean, I'm sure you saw some of my tweets during the head coaching search. I got a little bit ahead of myself, shall we say, and kind of lost the plot a little bit. A couple of the news that came out. I was the same with you. I mean, when Monken was hired, my first thought was, same as you, a 60-year-old first-time head coach. That's literally, we're not talking about that rarely works. That has never in the history of the NFL, as far as I can find, has ever worked out. But then I suppose on the flip side of it, I was that happy that it wasn't Jim Schwartz that I kind of thought, well, let me actually give it a little bit, let me give it a couple of days to sit and brew. Let me see how I feel about it. It wasn't the worst case outcome, which in my opinion was Jim Schwartz. So let's see how we go. And I think same with you, as every kind of passing week has gone on, I've kind of grown more, fond of the hire. Every time I hear him speak, I've grown more fond of the hire, because I think hearing Monken speak, especially hearing him talk offense for a team, as you mentioned, that has literally had the worst offense in the NFL for 2 years, that's like music to your ears, just hearing him talk offense. So is that going to work as a head coach? We'll obviously have to wait and see. It's the Cleveland Browns. History would suggest no. But if anyone is going to make it work, Todd Monken seems like the kind of guy that can do that. And as you said, he's surrounded himself with a great coaching staff. We've still got this great defense and pretty much all of the coaching staff other than the DC. So hopefully it does work out. We obviously then got to free agency, and, we've changed all of the coaching staff. And another big change, I suppose, and one that I assume is the same with you, welcomed, is a big change to this offense. And obviously mainly the offensive line completely, was it 5 new starters, 4 new starters, whatever people were talking about. What do you make of the offensive line signings in free agency? And I'm going to include Titus Howard in that. I know obviously that was the trade technically before free agency started, but I include that with that. So what do you think of the job that they've done with the resources that they had, bringing in Zion Johnson, bringing in Titus Howard, Elton Jenkins, re-signing Tevin Jenkins? We've got 2 Jenkins on the line now. What's your thoughts on what they did on the offensive line?
Yeah, so this is what I've been saying too. You've got Cleveland mainstream media, Mary Kay, Tony Grossi, these guys are out there on Twitter and on the radio show saying, well, Andrew Berry needs a lot of credit. Got to give him a lot of credit for fixing this offensive line. And the wording really rubs me the wrong way. Don't tell me they fixed the offensive line until I see it on the field.
Yeah.
Is Andrew Berry front office doing a good job approaching free agency with the offensive line, bringing in new players that have good potential to succeed? Yes. I'm not going to say it's a win or an A+ free agency or anything until I see it on the field, because it could go really bad too. Titus Howard, like you said, Zion Johnson, Tevin Jenkins, to me, it's okay. It's average. I don't think there's any superstar offensive linemen that we went out and signed or traded for. I think these are capable starters. And I think a lot of it's going to have to do with the scheme. A lot of it's going to have to do with the offense these guys are asked to execute and the way they're coached up. Because I'm still of the camp that I don't fully believe that Joel Bitonio, Ethan Posick, Wyatt Teller, and Jack Conklin, and Cornelius Lucas, and all these other guys all of a sudden quit knowing how to play football all at the same time. I think that there was some age that was involved in the decline, but I do think a lot of it had to do with the offensive scheme and defenses having a heads up on what we were trying to do in certain situations that just took our guys at a disadvantage. The one I really do like is Elgton Jenkins from the Green Bay Packers. I think as long as he comes off his injury from last year, okay, and he's back to 100% for the start of the season, I think we got a really good one there. I think his ability to play, I mean, everyone says, oh, they got their new center. He only played center last year. He's played left tackle. He's played the guard spots. I think he's a very versatile lineman that can, and he said this, like, I'll play wherever they need me to go, and I think that's a great attitude. Zion Johnson, I know there's Chargers fans out there on social media that are like, thank God somebody else took this guy. Get him off my team. I'm like, ooh, that's the kind of stuff we used to say about Jed Wills and, James Hudson. He's got elite traits, and I know that's something Todd Monken has said. Just get me players that have at least one elite trait, and I can work with that. So it's encouraging. And like I said, I'm going to look at it as an average revamp of the O-line until we get to September, October, and kind of see how it actually plays out on the field.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not just with us and with the O-line. I mean, that's with everything with free agency and national media, not just our media from other teams. They all want to do this. Oh, what would you grade this? And what would you say? And it's like, well, we haven't even got to the draft yet, let alone the season. I don't really know how I can sit here in March and tell you that, yep, we've completely fixed the offensive line. We don't have to worry about the offensive line. As you said, that's just completely silly to do so. Don't get me wrong. I think, the position that they were in, the players that were available in free agency, you're never going to go and get Joe Thomas in free agency. There's a reason why free agents are free agents and aren't on their team with a long-term contract. There's a reason why these guys become available. Most case scenarios, obviously a Tyler Linderbaum becoming available is, quite rare that someone top of their market becomes available. But a 5-win team resetting the center market 10 million above the previous record. As much as I love Tyler Linderbaum, I'm not sure that should have been our priority. So I'm not exactly mad about that. But for me, same with you. As I said, I'm not going to sit here and try and tell people that, yet we fixed the offensive line. But I do think from, as I was saying, the position that we were in, the players that were available, yes, I think we've taken the right step. I think we've made the moves. I mean, we made more signings than I expected, to be honest. I thought at least 2. But maybe 2, 3 max, and they've ended up Titus Howard, Zion Johnson, Elgton Jenkins, re-signing Tevin Jenkins. We still don't even know what's going on with Joel Bitonio. If he comes back, then obviously that would throw another kind of not a wrench into the mix. Obviously that would be a bonus, but that would obviously make more players available at that guard position. You said it with Elgton Jenkins. Everyone wants to say that's our new center. Both his Pro Bowl seasons came at left guard. He's pretty much graded out better, pretty much at guard than any other position in his career. So I would be happy playing him at guard if obviously they're confident in Luke Whippler at center. Maybe they go and draft the center. Who knows? That's why I think until the draft, we can't really, as you said, we can't sit here and say, well, we fixed the offensive line. There's still other pieces that need to be done. But as I was saying, I do think that in the position that we were in, the players that were available, I'm happy with the moves that they've made. And I can see the kind of vision that what they're going for, bring in some athletes, bring in some guys that are available. And I think that's the biggest thing out of anything. You said about the offensive line. Did they just forget playing football? No. But I think a big part of it was the injuries. A big part of it was just the turntable on that offensive line that, Joel Bitonio, as good as he is, when you've got a different left tackle next to you every single game, when you've got a different center on the inside of you every single game, it's quite hard to play at a consistent level. So bringing in Titus Howard, who's missed, 2 games in the last 2 years, bringing in Zion Johnson, who I think's missed 2 games in his career. Everyone can talk about the Chargers' offensive line last season. Yes, they were pretty bad, but how much of that was missing their 2 starting tackles for pretty much the whole season? Their center was pretty much missed quite a lot of the season as well. Zion Johnson was the only one to play every game on that offensive line. So obviously when you're playing on an offensive line that isn't great and you've got the most snaps, it's easy to say, well, this guy was bad. But I think a lot of that, when you go and watch the film of him, you can tell that, it's a guy that doesn't trust his left tackle and it's a guy that doesn't trust his center and is having to do quite a lot. So obviously, the money is probably a little bit more than I would have liked. If you had said Zion Johnson for 49 million, is it? I'd have gone, not too sure about that. But, once we look at the kind of numbers and the breakdown, it's basically 2 years, 16 million on the guarantee. So it's not as bad as it initially looks. But I'm a fan, shall I say, of what they've done, because as I said, I think the position they were in, this was pretty much the most they could do. Maybe they could have signed a Rashid Walker, but we all saw what he got in the end. Clearly, they weren't that interested. So I think where we're at right now is a good start, and obviously we'll get into it, in the coming conversation about obviously what they do in the draft as well. But any final thoughts on the offensive line? Or
exactly what I wanted to say too. I'm glad you brought up the injuries and signing and trading for guys that have a history here of being consistently on the field. Yeah, that's a big deal. Being available is definitely a big deal. And it's important to remember, too, that the reason the Browns are in this situation, not just with the offensive line, but with the entire roster and how depleted we are at depth positions and across the offensive line and wide receiver and all this stuff, is because Andrew Berry has really failed to bring in adequate depth or players behind these guys that can step in. I mean, we thought a Zach Zinter would be that type of player that, hey, once Joel Bitonio retires or Wyatt Teller's contract runs out, Zach Zinter can take over. Well, he hasn't done anything yet. He can't even be active, let alone be on the field for this team, despite all the injuries. That's what was crazy last year. This team had so many injuries on the offensive line, and we're bringing in practice squad guys to play in the interior because Zach Zinter can't get on the field. So it's very worrisome. You got Luke Whippler, he's hurt every year. DeJuan Jones hurt every year. It's just disappointing that we're in this situation. I'm really hoping he can fix it because I don't know how many seasons he has left. If you ask me, my opinion on Andrew Berry is pretty low right now because over 6 years, the roster has fallen apart. And from what it was in 2020 when he came in here and took over. So it is concerning to me, but I know last year was a good offseason, a good draft. He needs a good draft this year as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it there. It should have never got to this point. We should have never got to a point where we're going, right, we have to literally completely rebuild the offensive line. And as you said there, everyone was talking about 5 starters, but that's okay. But if we bring in 5 starters, who's the backups? We've all seen this offensive line. We've all seen this offensive line not just 2 seasons, the last 3 seasons, even the playoff season in 2023. The injuries have just mounted up, and you can say it's luck or whatever. There's clearly a link between the injuries on the offensive line and what was going on, and to get into a position where we're not just having to completely replace the starters, we need to completely replace everything. We might need 8 new offensive linemen, and you should never ever corner yourself into a position where you're having to do that. So as much as he could have gone and signed 5 Hall of Famers on the offensive line, that still doesn't justify the fact that we got to this point. And, you kind of mentioned it earlier with, on your show, having a little bit of a disagreement about Stefanski. I've been a big fan of Stefanski over the years. I was ready for him to go. I made that very clear. I think that, that his time had expired, not necessarily because I think he's a terrible head coach. I just think what he was doing here wasn't working. And I think probably you have the same kind of opinion as me, which was I don't quite understand how Kevin Stefanski lost his job, but Andrew Berry kept his job when they're kind of part and parcel, both responsible for what we've seen over the last few years. So don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of what he does in terms of the finances. I'm a big fan in terms of the cash over cap model, et cetera, et cetera. My biggest worry of getting rid of an Andrew Berry is if you bring someone in with a different philosophy on finances. Well, we've got a lot of dead cap and a lot of void years in the next, 5-6 years that need to be managed. And if it's not managed by someone that has that expertise in it, then that could go south pretty quickly. But that shouldn't be enough to, justify doing bad at every other area of your job. So you said it there. Andrew Berry has got a big year ahead of him. He's got a big offseason ahead of him. We both spoke about how, yes, he's made strides in that direction, but we need another good draft. And we need another, we need a non-5-win disastrous season for him to feel safe in his job. And obviously to feel safe going forward with the new coaching staff as well.
This episode is partnered with Kalshi. Browns fans, are you ready to put your money where your predictions are? With Kalshi, America's #1 regulated prediction market, you can legally trade on events that actually matter to you. And the best part is you don't need to predict specific stat lines and compile a 7-leg parlay just to win big. With Kalshi, the objective is either yes or no. Will Shedeur Sanders be the Browns' Week 1 starting quarterback? Will Fernando Mendoza be the first overall pick in the draft? Will the Browns make their pick at 6, or will they trade out of that spot? And in other sports, will the Cavs win the NBA Finals? You can put your money on these predictions and more with Kalshi. If you want to try it out, Kalshi is giving $10 to anyone who signs up at kalshi.com/dogs and trades $100. Get away from disadvantageous sports books and dive into real-world outcomes with real-time odds and real payouts. Head over to Kalshi, KALSHI.com/dogs, DAWGS, or just click the link in the description to get $10 when you trade $100 with Kalshi. Because why shouldn't you get paid for being right? This episode is sponsored by ButcherBox. Browns fans, with all the free agency and draft talk, you know that spring is right around the corner, and there's no better feeling than stepping into that sunshine, ripping off that old cover, and firing up the grill. And ButcherBox has the perfect deal for you to get the best meat onto that grill this spring. Head to butcherbox.com/dogs, DAWGS, right now, and new users will get their choice between free chicken breast for a year or ground beef in every box for the lifetime of their subscription. And if you're just placing a one-time order, make sure you guys use promo code DOGS, DAWGS at checkout to get our podcast discount. With ButcherBox, you get to choose your box and how often it's delivered. With the custom classic box, for example, you get exactly what you and your family need for the warmer weather. Choose from over 80 different products, including meat and seafood. Plus, you can manage your entire subscription online and change your box type, product selections, frequency, or delivery date anytime. Shipping is always free. Deliveries come straight to your door on your schedule, and you can cancel anytime. So what are you guys waiting for? Head over to butcherbox.com/dogs right now. New users, you guys are going to get your choice between free chicken breast for a year or ground beef in every box for the lifetime of your subscription. And again, if you're just placing a one-time order, use promo code DOGS at checkout for our podcast discount. That's butcherbox.com/dogs.
Quickly on the other couple of other free agents that we got, Quincy Williams. I mean,
yes,
definitely could have had a worse replacement for Devin Bush. What's your thoughts on the Quincy Williams signing?
I'm pumped about Quincy Williams. He's the one free agent signing that got me eyes big, excited when I saw the notification. I was like, yes, because we did free agency preview episodes on our podcast, breaking down guys that we wanted the Browns to go target in free agency and could potentially bring in here. And I highlighted Quincy Williams as a guy, if they didn't bring back Devin Bush, who I wanted.
Yeah.
But if you couldn't get him or the money just didn't work out, I figured, well, Quincy Williams is going to be around a similar contract. And if you're willing to pay Devin Bush that sort of a contract, but he doesn't want to come back or you can't get him, go after Quincy Williams because this dude is a game wrecker. And I'm excited to see what he can do in that linebacking unit with Carson Swessinger manning down the middle. I think it's going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone would have loved to re-sign Devin Bush. I mean, what he's done the last 2 years, I mean, he's essentially saved his NFL career, if we're being completely honest. I mean, he had that great rookie season in Pittsburgh, and then obviously kind of just went downhill, looking like he was going to be out of the league sooner rather than later. So for him to come here and essentially turn his career around, revamp his career, I'm really happy for him. He goes and gets a long-term 3-year, $30+ million contract in Chicago. That's great for him. I would have loved to keep him, but we got Carson Schwarzenegger, we got Captain America, shall we say, the reigning defensive rookie of the year, deservedly so, no matter what Seattle Seahawks fans try and tell us. When you have that player already in the building, are you willing to give that kind of money and that kind of contract to his kind of Robin, shall we say? I don't think you are. So if you are able to get a Quincy Williams, who I don't think the drop-off is even big at all. If Quincy Williams can get anything back to his 2023 form, it's an improvement, let alone a drop-off. And you're getting him cheaper and you're getting him for less years. There's less, obviously, commitment in it. And, of course, we've all seen the footage of him and new Browns defensive coordinator. Obviously, how much of a fan they are both of each other. They can't speak highly of each other. So I'm pretty sure, once they figured out that Devin Bush wouldn't be coming back, they probably went over to Rutenberg and said, right, is there any linebacker that you would want to bring in? And I'm sure he just went, Quincy Williams, go and get him no matter how you can. So I think that's another thing of the signing as well. You spoke about the player. Obviously, if he can get to his form of 2023, that's going to be massive. But I think just the familiarity with the new defensive coordinator, who he's got a lot of new guys that he has to get used to. He has to build relationships with on this defense, who can be a good bridge for that and someone that can help with that within the locker room. Quincy Williams can do that. So I think it's a really good sign. And I was the same with you. When I saw it, I was like, wow, okay, that's a really good sign. Same with the Elton Jenkins sign. And, we haven't had many of those the last quite a few years. It's kind of why I didn't expect the Browns to be as active as they were, because, last year we got the Malik Collins signing, and that was pretty much it. So to see these two come through, I was like, yep, that's a really good sign, and was a big fan of that. I won't go into the others because I'm not going to sit here and spend 10 minutes about a blocking tight end, but Jack Stowe is your new inline blocking tight end, guys. There we go. If he gets obviously if we draft someone, then maybe he kind of becomes that third guy, but I expect him to probably be that number 2, and that's the Harold Fanning.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed the first part of my conversation with Oliver. There's going to be 2 more episodes coming out later this week with the rest of that conversation. Really good stuff, some really good viewpoints, and no, we don't both agree on absolutely everything. We are going to get into some things where we do have differing viewpoints on how the Browns should approach primarily the draft. So that's going to be a big topic of conversation coming up next. So stay tuned for that. Before we get out of here today, we got a voicemail from our girl, Stacy. So let's hear what she has to say.
Hey guys, it's Stacy. I didn't get a chance to get in on the Discord live episode the other day. I was at work, so didn't get a second to get in there, but I was able to listen to it. And I just kind of wanted to throw in my 2 cents a little bit for the conversation about Carnell Tate, and if he wasn't an Ohio State receiver, then maybe we would be talking differently about him. My 2 cents with that is I think the reason why we talk differently about him is exactly that, because he is an Ohio State receiver and he's coming from Ohio State, where truthfully, I think that team, as we've seen in the past with their receivers, the receivers that come out of there, like the Marvin Harrisons, the JSNs, receivers like that, Chris Olave, those receivers, I feel, and again, this is just my opinion, I feel those receivers would be number 1 receivers on another team. And the fact that they are on Ohio State and some of them are number 2 receivers, that's why they're being projected so high in the draft. Like, I understand we're from Ohio, we're going to be Ohio State homers, but I think we have a very good reason to be. Like, look at the stats and look at the past and how it's gone for Ohio State receivers. And I just think at 6, it's completely silly to pass up on Carnell Tate if he's there.
Stacy, I got to tell you, I texted Justin immediately after the Discord show last week, and I said, man, I feel really bad for Stacy. She had her hand up twice in there, and freaking Brad Moneymaker and Andrew Jackson just kept going back and forth, throwing blows at each other. And then Andrew wanted to come in and tell us that Carnell Tate is not a good wide receiver. We just think he is. We are being mind-effed into believing this guy is a number one receiver or the best receiver in this class just because he went to Ohio State. I am with you, Stacy. So, the old trope, and I'm just messing with you, Brad and Andrew. You guys know I love you, but it's always said every year, scout the player, don't scout the helmet. Okay, I scouted the player. The player's really freaking good. And then you add in the fact that the helmet tells you he's going to be a good NFL wide receiver, and that makes Carnell Tate my number one receiver in this class, hands down. The same sort of sentiments and conversations were had around those other guys you just mentioned. The biggest one that I can think of, I guess the biggest two, the first one was Jackson Smith-Njigba, wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks coming out of college. It was, I don't know if this guy can be a number one wide receiver. He was primarily a slot receiver at Ohio State. He didn't face the best competition from the opposing defenses because he had Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson on the field with him at the same time over his seasons there. And then his final season in college, he missed pretty much the entire year with a hamstring injury. So it was coming out of college, there were big question marks about JSN. I don't know if people really remember that because he just went and won Offensive Player of the Year this year, led the entire NFL in all the receiving stuff. He was the best receiver in the league this year. But it was his third year. See, I tell people all the time, everybody wants to point to Jamar Chase. Well, if he's not Jamar Chase, you can't take him in the top 6. So you're telling me if a guy isn't the one biggest outlier in the last, 7 or 8 years that you can't take him? That's the dumbest argument I've ever heard. Jamar Chase is a complete outlier. Justin Jefferson, complete outlier. These guys typically don't come into the NFL and produce at overall wide receiver 1 marks right away as a rookie. That just doesn't happen. They are outliers for a reason. You look at a guy like JSN, took him 3 years. He didn't really explode onto the scene until year 3, and that's what he just did. You look at guys like Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson that you mentioned. We had those conversations about those guys coming out of Ohio State back when they were drafted. Can they truly be a number one wide receiver on an NFL offense? They were on the field. They shared the field pretty much their entire NFL, college careers together. Can they be Yes, they can absolutely be number one wide receivers for their team. Terry McLaurin was drafted in the 3rd round, came in and immediately was a wide receiver 1 for his team out of Ohio State. Never the one, not even close to being the number 1 receiver for the Buckeyes when he played in Columbus. So here we are. Another Ohio State receiver coming out. And the big thing with Carnell Tate, and I keep talking about this, and I didn't plan on talking about it this long, but Stacy, you got me going about my Buckeye guy here. Carnell Tate, 2.27 career yards per route run. That is a very high mark. That is excellent. Really, last year, and people, I know we had this conversation on that Discord show, and I think Andrew was really misinformed about Carnell Tate's career at Ohio State and his age because he started throwing around Xavier Legette as a comparison as far as being a late breakout. Xavier Legette was like 23 years old in his 5th year in college before he ever did anything on the field. Carnell Tate last year, as a 19-year-old in 2024, 733 yards on 52 receptions for 4 touchdowns. And that was on the field with Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith. So that is to me, that's a breakout. That is a breakout for a guy operating as the 3rd option and maybe even the 4th option in the offense because they had Travion Henderson out of the backfield they like to throw the ball to as well. Still put up almost 750 yards. And that was his first season starting for the Buckeyes. That's very impressive to me. And then this year rolls right into that, 1A, 1B role with Jeremiah Smith, 51 catches, 875, through the air and 9 touchdowns. And the deeper metrics, I've gone over them a million times, but why I'm so intrigued and why I want Carnell Tate so badly. 3.02 yards per route run. He's the only one of 3 receivers in this draft class to get over 3 yards per route run. You know, I want my guys, if I'm taking a guy this high, I want him at least at 2.5. Carnell Tate was over 3. Super impressive. 0 drops. That to me is the big one. The dude doesn't drop the ball, and he has an 85.7% contested catch rate. They were chucking the ball down the field, throwing up 50-50 balls to him, and he was coming down with almost every single one of them and didn't drop a single pass. Now, if you wanted to knock on him a little bit, he doesn't, or at least in college, didn't offer a whole lot after the catch, just 6 missed tackles forced, not a ton of yards after the catch, 231. That was good for 4.5 yards after catch per reception. Again, that can be understood based on the way he was utilized and his play style. There aren't a lot of yards after the catch to be had when you're catching deep passes in the end zone. When you're catching deep passes down the sideline, as soon as you catch the ball, you're pushed out of bounds. You're going up for 50-50 balls. As soon as you catch the ball, you come down on your back because you're getting tackled as you're catching the ball. There aren't a lot of yards after catch opportunities in those situations. Now, do I think he can be utilized in the intermediate area of the field and win in that area of the field? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I am a big fan of Carnell Tate, and I'm telling you guys right now, you can bookmark this episode. You can keep the receipts and come back at me later if I am wrong, but I don't think I'm going to be hearing that from you because I'm going to say right now, if the Browns pass on Carnell Tate, whoever drafts him, you are going to see him ascend at the NFL level because everything he does well in college, the way he wins, his route nuance, the way that he creates separation and wide open windows based on his route running, not his speed. Because remember, I keep seeing people say, oh, well, he doesn't have sub 4.4 speed. He can't be an elite receiver. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, the list goes on and on of these guys who ran in the 4.5s. Carnell Tate was a 4.52. He's right there with a CeeDee Lamb as far as speed. I'm pretty sure CeeDee Lamb is fast and can get open. That is Carnell Tate. That's how he wins. And those things that he does well translates right into the NFL. So I'm not concerned one bit. I'm telling you guys, he will end up being a wide receiver 1 for whatever team drafts him. If the Giants draft him, then he's going to be in the conversation for wide receiver 1 with Malik Neighbors on that roster. I think if he goes somewhere that already has an established wide receiver 1, okay, maybe he doesn't lead the team in target share and things like that because they've already got a guy. That's the only situation where I could see him not being the target share leader, lead target earner, yards leader, all that stuff on an NFL offense. If the Commanders took him at 7 and he was kind of playing the 1B with Terry McLaurin, okay, he won't be the target leader until Terry McLaurin either leaves or retires because he's, 30 years old, so he's toward the end of his prime anyway. But if he goes to a team where he, like the Titans, where he's the clear number 1, he's going to be the clear number 1, and you guys will see that. So, Stacy, thank you for the voicemail. Again, we're going to try to get our Discord shows a little more organized where people come up, get the questions asked a little quicker, and we can move through more of you guys on the show because I hate seeing hands go up in the chat and then not be able to get to you guys. So I do appreciate you following up with the voicemail, and I'm glad we got to talk a little more here about Carnell Tate because on the next episode, at least on the next part of my conversation with the UK Browns fan, we dive into that. We dive into the draft and offensive tackle versus wide receiver, Monroe Freeling versus Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson, all this stuff. So check it out. Stay tuned. Thank you guys for joining the episode here today, following us on all the socials. And again, if you want to be part of that Dog Pack Discord community, head over to jointhedogs.com. We'll see you over there. Thank you for everything you guys do in supporting the show. Cannot tell you how much we appreciate it more than we do. So thank you again. See you guys in the next one. And of course, as always, let's go Browns.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dogs Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at The Dogs Podcast. Get your thoughts on the show at thedogspodcast.com.
This episode is sponsored by ISSA. Browns fans, if you're into health and fitness, have you ever wondered how you could maybe turn those hobbies and your passion into an actual career? If that sounds interesting to you, then ISSA has the opportunity you've been looking for. ISSA is the International Sports Science Association, and they can help you become a certified personal trainer in as little as 3 months. And right now you can get $100 off your certification when you sign up through our link, joinissa.com/dogs, DAWGS. Now, certifications are 100% online, self-study, and self-paced. You can study anywhere from your phone, tablet, or computer. And the final exam is open note, open book, aka piece of cake. Except you fitness nuts probably don't eat a ton of cake, so let's just call it a piece of delicious protein bar. And ISSA has the #1 job guarantee in the industry. If you get certified and sign up to be a certified trainer with ISSA, you have a job guarantee or your money back. ISSA has over 10,000 gym partners that have over 73,000 open jobs for trainers right now. And you don't need a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree. You just need your certification to qualify for these jobs. So what are you waiting for? With certification this simple, there's no excuse not to pursue your passion and become a certified personal trainer today. Get $100 off your certification at joinissa.com/dogs. You've wanted to make a change long enough. Now it's time to do something about it. That's joinissa.com/dogs for $100 off your personal trainer certification.
Running a business means checking a lot of boxes.
Let's see. Payroll? Check. Inventory? Check. Insurance?
Good thing Simply Business makes getting small business insurance fast and easy. Check insurance off your list at simplybusiness.com.